Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The top story we are tracking this evening. Nobel Prize winner Muhammad Yunus has taken oath as the head of the interim government in Bangladesh. Yunus's oath-taking ceremony took place at the presidential palace in Dhaka. The event was attended by political leaders, civil society leaders, generals and diplomats. India's High Commissioner was also in attendance. Yunus will oversee 27 ministries and divisions. The Nobel Laureate has announced a 16-member council of advisors to lead the nation out of the political and economic crisis. This comes days after former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned from her post and fled the country amid massive protests. Meanwhile, visuals have emerged showing large crowds gathered at the India-Bangladesh border. The Indian government has constituted a committee to monitor the current situation under the leadership of the Additional Director General of the Border Security Force. The committee will maintain communication channels with their counterparts in Bangladesh to ensure the safety and security of Indian nationals, Hindus and other minorities. As per the latest data available, Awami League's government has left a per capita debt of over 1 lakh Bangladeshi rupees. To take this discussion forward, we are now joined by Michael Kugelman, director at the Wilson Center's South Asia Institute. Mr. Kugelman, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, the Biden administration and US administrations generally had been critical of Sheikh Hasina. They saw her as somebody who was autocratic. They did not see the recent elections as free and fair. But what has happened in Bangladesh over the last 2 to 3 days, how is that being seen in the United States in terms of a transition to power? Are they welcoming the new interim government? Do they welcome the conduct of elections in the country?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. There had been a lot of concern in Washington about the events of recent weeks in Bangladesh, particularly with the high levels of violence and then the uncertainty about what's to come. But yes, I mean, the U.S. government has very much welcomed the formation of the interim government, and the U.S. State Department spokesman yesterday said that we look forward to working with the interim government. And of course, the head of the interim government, Dr. Yunus, is someone that the U.S. is very comfortable with. He, of course, has very good ties and connections across the board in the United States. But I think that for the U.S., one of the issues that continues to be a concern is the lack of clarity as to what's coming next, the lack of a clear pathway to a transition. But I think it recognizes the interim government as an important first step, and sees Dr. Yunus as someone that it would be comfortable working with, and that I think it feels is comfortable with leading Bangladesh at this extremely delicate, difficult moment.
Right. What I'd also like to ask you, there have been reports that the United States has scrapped her visa. There were also visa sanctions on members of her government in the run-up to the crisis that we saw. Sheikh Hasina had also said in January this year that a white man came to her. It is believed that she was talking about United States here, that this white man said that his country wanted to build an Air Force base in Bangladesh. They want to establish a Christian country, but she will not give in to such demands. How do you see some of these allegations, some of these links that are being made to the United States?
Well, we know that Sheikh Hasina for many years had been very uncomfortable with certain U.S. policies. And of course, this goes back to '71 when the U.S. government supported the Pakistani army. And, she has not forgotten about that for understandable reasons. But the allegations she made that you just laid out, quite frankly, I'm not sure what to make of those. I think it's very clear that the U.S. had been uncomfortable about her policies, particularly during her last 2 years in power, when the U.S. saw her as an increasingly repressive leader, even an autocrat. But it is worth remembering that right after the last election in Bangladesh, when Sheikh Hasina came back for her what turned out to be a very short-lived final term, President Biden sent a letter to Sheikh Hasina in which he called for a new era in U.S.-Bangladesh relations. Other senior U.S. officials made similar statements. So I think that there actually was a bit of a course correction in the U.S. in recent months, in which the conclusion was basically that we need to do a better job of balancing the values component of our relationship with Bangladesh and the interest component. Perhaps there was a concern that by being so critical, so openly of Sheikh Hasina and her government, that it was risking pushing Sheikh Hasina closer to China, something like that. I don't know for sure, but it is ironic that right in what became the last few months of Hasina's rule, at that point the U.S. started taking a different position, and then just a few months later she was ousted.
Right. Now the challenge for India, we also have adversaries in Pakistan, in China. Now, what has happened is that the BNP, which is going to be contesting elections whenever they're going to be held, has already said that India should not be sheltering Sheikh Hasina. How can there be mutual cooperation honored if you host our enemy? This is what the Bangladesh Nationalist Party of Khalida Zia has said. Now, having Sheikh Hasina here in India, and at the moment, it seems she's not immediately going anywhere. Where does this leave India, and how does this really increase challenges for India in the neighborhood?
Yeah, India is clearly in a very tough spot because out of its friendship to Sheikh Hasina, it would not want to tell her she can't stay in India anymore. But I think that India needs to get things right with Bangladesh. It can't afford to lose Bangladesh, and I think for that reason, it actually has a strong interest in not keeping her in India that long. Maybe a few more days, maybe a few more weeks, but beyond that, I think that it would want to ensure that she could find somewhere to go for asylum. Just because, indeed, the longer she stays in India, the more the risk there is to India's ability to carefully cultivate some semblance of a workable relationship with the new dispensation in Bangladesh right now. Now, you know well that for many years, India had looked at Sheikh Hasina and her party as the best option for India politically, and it really did not have any desire or appetite for any political alternative to Sheikh Hasina and her party. But again, I think that India will conclude that it needs to make things work with Bangladesh, given trade interests, given security interests. Border security is critical. There needs to be collaboration there. And also, I think India concludes that it would need to make sure that Bangladesh doesn't move so close to China that there's no hope for India. And I would also think that Bangladesh itself recognizes the need to work with India, even though you won't have an Awami League in power in Bangladesh. I think there's a recognition that Bangladesh needs India, given the economic issues at play, border security issues.
Right.
There's so much. So in due course, I think it'll get easier
Okay.
for India. But right now, with all the uncertainty, it is in a very tough spot.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us on the program. Definitely a challenging situation for India as well. Let's see what happens vis-a-vis